I was kind of relieved that there were no drug therapies or surgeries available to fix the problem. But then I was very frustrated.
Sandy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to chat. When we talked off air, I was really impressed by your expertise and your depth of knowledge around magnesium and the reason why you started your business. So maybe we should start sort of at the beginning of your journey, how you got into learning about and researching magnesium, how you started Elektra, and then we can sort of get into it from there, I think.
So I used to be a magazine publisher because we live on the Gold Coast, which is a tourist area in Australia, a little bit like Miami-ish or Southern California. And we produced a tourist publication, and when the GFC hit in 2008, or actually the year before preceding it, a lot of stress and tension was building up economically with all the small businesses in this tourist community. And then they couldn't pay, or they were later in paying. It caused me a lot of stress, and I let go of staff, and I had to just cope as best I could. But I ended up often doing a 24-hour stint, like round the clock, to get everything done for print on time, because it was timely.
Wow.
You had to get to the distributor, and everything was time specific. And then I was loaded with this extra work. I was already doing the advertorials and the editing, and then I had to do some extra ads for people that came in at the last minute because we just needed everything in there to pay for the bills. And all the stress, because I'm very conscientious, all the stress was getting to me.
Yeah.
And I was eating a fresh, healthy, organic food diet, and I was eating a handful of supplements from the health food store. I rattled when I walk. I thought I was doing all the right things, and yet I was starting to develop really severe, what I didn't know at the time were magnesium deficiency symptoms. So when you have very low, critically low magnesium, it affects the heart rhythm because it's about the electrical system. And so I was getting very breathless, and I felt like my heart was like trembling or putting. So the feeling was a bit like if you're in a car that hasn't been properly tuned and you're idling at the traffic lights, and it kind of does this kind of stutter. And at any moment you think it's going to just conk out, right? That's the feeling I was getting with my heart. Like at any moment it could stop. I felt really stressed by it, like fearful.
Yeah.
And so that didn't make it any better, being afraid of what was happening. Anyway, one day the arrhythmias were getting worse, and they rushed me to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And went through all the testing and processes, and the cardiologist finally said, well, your heart muscle's fine, it's got no abnormalities, and you've got no blockages in your arteries. He said, you've just got a little twitch in the left ventricle of your heart muscle, kind of like a twitch in the eye or a cramp in the leg, just a muscle thing. He said, put up with it like everyone else. He said you'd be amazed how many people have this issue.
Oh my goodness.
I was kind of relieved that there were no drug therapies or surgeries available to fix the problem. But then I was very frustrated because I didn't understand what was going on still. And I certainly didn't want to put up with it. So I did a lot of research. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in a different area, but, to fix my own issues, I had to do research in the area of what's causing the heart arrhythmias. So I ordered in a lot of books that had been written. All roads lead to Rome, and everything to do with the heart seemed to be indicating magnesium deficiency. So I ordered magnesium chloride flakes in after reading all the literature, because I read that bathing in magnesium can help, soothe the nervous system and calm everything down, and it's very good for the heart. So I did that. There were no magnesium chloride flakes, salt flakes anywhere in Australia to buy at the time. That was 2008. And lo and behold, even within the first few weeks, everything was calming down. I would do, probably 3 soaks a week.
Okay.
And that I started to feel better and better. And then I thought, this is a good opportunity, because if I'm solving my own issue, I remembered the cardiologist saying, you'd be amazed how many people have this problem.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, maybe I've got an alternative to this publication business, which is totally reliant on the little businesses in our tourist region that weren't getting enough cash flow because the tourists weren't coming because the financial system was crashing. So I thought, I wonder. So I started to explore opportunities, and I ordered. It took me about half a year of research to really find a good source. Bringing it in from Europe was way too expensive, being on the other side of the planet, and also European products tend to be quite expensive to start with. So I did find a Southeast Asian source from the Tibetan Plateau, 3,000 meters above sea level, had them lab tested to 10 parts per billion, no mercury, no lead, beautiful, clean, food-grade magnesium chloride, also with 2% of other sea trace minerals. So mountain minerals, beautiful, pristine salts. So I brought them in, and that was the beginning of Elektra Magnesium. So that for 1 year I did a little bit of both. I scaled back the magazine and eventually changed it to a quarterly issue. And then the second year of magnesium, I was able to completely let go of the other business, and I was off and running. But I did realize too that in my circumstance, I was feeling better and not soaking as much. It's a little bit inconvenient, right? I was busy, or sometimes you get lazy and you don't feel like it. So one day I'm putting my moisturizer on and going, I wonder, what if we put the soap inside a cream?
Yeah.
And then I'd be doing it every day without thinking, autopilot, no extra stuff to do, because I was using a moisturizer every day. So I had a hypothyroid condition, just going back to the heart arrhythmias. It was connected with hypothyroidism, and your thyroid is also severely affected, thyroid and adrenals, when you're under excessive stress. Stress causes huge magnesium dumping. The body just dumps it. You pee it out faster. Any kind of stress. So shift work or not getting sleep when you should be sleeping, a physical stress, emotional stress, temperatures, too hot, too cold. You can name any kind of stress. You will churn through a lot more magnesium during those times of stress. So people under chronic stress are obviously constantly losing it at high levels. And so for me and my genetic predisposition, it affected my thyroid. And so that affects digestion, which means it's hard to extract the nutrients out of the food you do eat, even if you think you're eating good food. And certainly the tablets and powders I was taking were going practically nowhere, except in the toilet, because my stomach acid wasn't working. That's what happens when you have hypothyroid condition. You're not making enough stomach acid. And also when magnesium is low, because magnesium is a big component, an important component in the production of stomach acid. And so the whole digestive system is then affected, because if you're not digesting the food properly right up at the stomach, you can get reflux. You can get, the food stays in there too long. It's slower to digest. You get slow motility. It starts to cause gases and gets stuck in the pipes of the digestive system, as you can get constipated, and it can go the other way. Eventually, the people lose a lot of their gut lining from the acids that are created. They can get leaky gut. It can turn into excessive diarrhea. It can go, any direction. But the whole gut dysbiosis really starts at the stomach area, and so finding another alternative, which is oral, is often not the solution for someone like me, and there are many someone like me's out there, because we need to find another way to get the important nutrients that we need without having to digest it. Anyway, you can actually inject magnesium, and hospitals do have a pharmaceutical grade magnesium chloride, which is an injectable. that they fall back on in a real emergency like a cardiac arrest. They can immediately relax the heart muscle if they inject magnesium in that very acute phase. Well, obviously, you don't want to let your health get that bad where you need one of those injections. So through the skin as a transdermal product, it's very, very safe, very effective, because the skin is self-regulating. So it holds like a reservoir. It's like a dinner plate. It sucks up the nutrients and holds it in that epidermal layer, which is connected to the dermis underneath, which has little capillaries, and they help to absorb magnesium, and then the body transfers that magnesium wherever is needed in the body. And recent studies have also shown that magnesium ions can actually be transferred or travel from cell to cell. They don't even have to get into the bloodstream, although it's very important for the bloodstream to have some magnesium for what's called zeta potential, and that helps to give the blood cells the right negative charge, so they bounce off one another and you get that better blood fluidity, and they don't stick together, which is what you don't want to do because that causes clots. So magnesium, researchers have found, is also antithrombotic. So it really is very supportive for the blood flow. However, what I found was that most magnesium in the body, so 99%, is in the muscle and the bone.
Okay.
Only 1% in the blood, which is why if you get a blood test, it can show normal levels of magnesium, because that's really crucial to keep those levels in the blood in a certain narrow range. And the body does whatever it can to do that. That's like super high on the priority list. And so the storage cells, which are the muscle and bone for magnesium, can often sacrifice the stored magnesium they have, leaving muscle and bone short. The blood supply has enough. So that's why it's not accurate to just rely on a blood test to work out how much whole of body magnesium you might have. So they can do tissue sample analysis if you really want to find out how much, but most of the time it's just easier to work with your symptoms. So there's a classic list of magnesium deficiency symptoms, and if you know you've got a good number of those, then you've probably got magnesium deficiency. And when you get that extra magnesium and those symptoms dissipate, well, then you're solving the problem. So it's very safe, and people can easily do this for themselves, a little bit of trial and error. And, we're all different and we need different amounts. And even from day to day, you need different amounts depending on, today might be Sunday, you have a really relaxing day, you've got your feet up, there's no big stresses, so your magnesium needs are more minimal. But on another day, you're like, lots of things happening, you're very, very active, and haven't had much rest and burning the candle at both ends. And so on those days, you need huge amounts. And then within the population, there are people that need excessively high amounts, sometimes 3 times more than the average. And they would be people like pregnant women, because pregnancy steals a lot of minerals from your bones, because you're growing another child, growing another person. And if you're just having the same amount as you always have, then your body's going to give priority to the baby and shortchange what you need. So a pregnant woman needs a lot more. And someone who does a lot of athletics or goes to the gym a lot, does a lot of training, a lot of muscle work. So even those people who are taking on board a lot of protein drinks to try and build muscle, a lot of the time they don't put enough magnesium in there. They can't put too much, because a lot of magnesium can work like a laxative, and you don't want the weightlifters to have an accident in the middle of pushing their weights.
That would be embarrassing at the gym for sure.
Yeah, this is one of the drawbacks of trying to get large amounts of magnesium into the body orally. And in fact, there are now a number of studies with magnesium water where they added magnesium to water and titrated it upwards, like a little bit more and a little bit more. They were trying to work out tolerance levels So they worked out when magnesium is in a concentration which is normal for spring water, and that's about 30 to 130 milligram per litre in the range of spring waters that they surveyed, that drinking the spring water gave you optimal absorption of magnesium across the gut wall to the interior of the body. Yeah, and so in the surface waters, you mostly get the magnesium salts, the magnesium chloride, and magnesium sulfate's also a type of magnesium salt. And, if pinch comes to shove and you need some kind of magnesium, you can fall back on that. However, the sulfate component of magnesium sulfate, that's Epsom salts, can irritate skin barriers and membranes because it breaks up the fatty particles into smaller pieces. So you can end up, if you have Epsom salt baths a lot, with dry, itchy skin because it's removing that surface, the fatty layer that protects the skin.
That makes sense.
But magnesium chloride doesn't. It's very nurturing of the skin. It has a lot of superior qualities and also more elemental magnesium as well. Compared to Epsom salts, that's why you don't quite need as much to get the same amount of magnesium. But the salts are definitely better because magnesium chloride salt is 100% water soluble. Now, the reason you can absorb it through the skin is because of the solubility and also because cells love magnesium chloride. So inside cells, the most dominant common electrolytes are potassium, then magnesium, and chloride. So magnesium chloride dissolved is already in the right form to get inside cells without needing any further digestion.
Oh, that's great.
So people always ask me, well, what's the difference? I'm taking tablets and powders. I said, well, are you getting rid of your cramps? Do you still have restless legs? And they go, well, yeah, but the doctor said that may be a problem with the digestion, right?
Yeah.
You're putting it in your mouth and swallowing it, but is it actually making through to the interior of the body and getting into cells? That is the number one question. So when you take magnesium tablets and powders, there are other types of magnesium compounds. For instance, magnesium is chelated sometimes with amino acids, and that can be a magnesium glycinate and magnesium taurate. And some of these magnesium tablets and powders can actually be quite good because we need glycine and we need taurine and we need those amino acids that it's joined up with. But then you can't get, and you use that up, but then you can't get still a lot of magnesium out of it because your stomach has to pull it apart. You have to have enough stomach acid. And remember, if you've got an issue with the thyroid, you're not making enough stomach acid. So you have to pull those elements apart through digestion. And then the body has to join that magnesium ion up with the chloride for cellular access. So it ends up being a magnesium salt through the process of digestion anyway. But it takes a lot of extra time and effort and energy. And then you can't get high amounts across the gut wall. So remember those experiments with the magnesium drinking water. Yep. As they put more and more magnesium concentration in, less and less was getting across the gut wall and more was being expelled in the toilet. Yep. The digestive system was just going, too much, can't get it across. So the summary and the conclusions of these experiments were, it's best to have a lower concentration, similar to spring water, regularly in your drinking water, and just drink it all day long.
Yep.
And then you can get an optimal absorption, an optimal amount of oral magnesium that way. But for instance, if you were, let's say you got in that drinking water and you drank 3 liters over 24 hours, you got maybe 250 milligram of magnesium gradually over the time, almost all of that would make it through. But if you took that all in one bolus, in one hit, then most of that would be expelled because concentration in that one time drink would be too high. And the higher in concentration, the more it sucks water into the bowel contents, the more it liquefies your stool. Which is, if you have constipation, a lot of people do use magnesium as a laxative. And so for that purpose, it's quite all right to use it that way. However, if you're expecting it to cross the gut wall to go to the interior of the body to satisfy your muscular and skeletal and nervous system magnesium needs, then you're being shortchanged because most of it's being lost. So through the skin is proven again and again and again to be a far superior method of absorbing optimal magnesium without any negative side effects. So you can soak in it. And what we did was we created, first of all, the world's first magnesium cream.
Yep.
Because that was convenient for me. So
yeah,
we made it first for me. My husband happens to have a chemistry background, applied science.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so he had trained to be a food technologist. I sent him down to Sydney to do an extra course in cosmetic chemistry so that he could develop this, because the other cosmetic chemist that we spoke to said, oh, you can't do it. The salt content you want to put in there is too high. It'll break up the oil-water emulsion. And it was always can't.
Mm.
So my husband is a little bit like the little black duck. Not this little black duck. He said, I just have a feeling I can do it.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of thinking outside the box and not doing what is standard and normal and has been done before. You've just got to get creative with it, because my requirement, I said, I don't want any chemicals in there. No chemical emulsifiers, no chemical preservatives. I don't want the phenoxyethanol, no oxybenzoate, no dimethicone, and there's more. Because that's the really easy way to join all that together and have it hold. But then over time, if you're constantly using skin products with these chemicals in, your liver can store them up. Over time, it can become toxic, and some of those chemicals can even become carcinogenic.
Totally.
So we want to be very careful with the skin. It's the largest organ of the body. It's porous, so it absorbs stuff.
Everything.
We kind of, if you don't know enough about it, you think, oh, the skin is a barrier, right? Water runs off it to some extent. But however, in a fatty environment, because the skin is lipophilic, it loves fats. So it sucks up the fat. So if the fats are wrapped up with chemicals and nasties, those nasties also get in along with the fats. So we avoided the nasties, and we just had the good guys, the magnesium ions and all the other plant nutrients. We loaded up our cream with lots and lots of plant extracts and just really supportive skin ingredients, just really packed full of nutrition, antioxidants, you name it. So that when the skin absorbs the cream and the really good rich fats of it, it takes in all those nutrients like food, and it sits inside the epidermal layer. The fats help protect the skin from moisture loss. So it's a super good moisturizer, very, very good anti-aging properties. And it keeps skin quite healthy. So even those people who tend to get acne and other kind of skin problems find it's non-comedogenic, which means it doesn't clog the pores, because the active enzymes and the magnesium ions help the skin clean itself.
Yep.
It just gives it all the right nutrition for the skin to do its job.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. So I talk like a waterfall when it comes to magnesium. Do you have any questions?
I have a few. I think, first of all, maybe we should take it back a little bit and talk about how magnesium works and why it's so important. I know for me, I'm learning so much through this conversation because I have suffered with restless leg syndrome since I can remember. Like, And if anybody's ever never heard of it or don't know what it's like, it's essentially like a gnawing sensation that makes me want to like move. And I weirdly only get it at nighttime, like right before bed. It's almost my signal that I'm tired and I need to sleep, because it's the only time that I get it. But I've been getting it like that ever since I was little. And I take magnesium supplements, but they're like the tablet forms. And I also sometimes do get weird heart palpitations where it's just like an extra hard beat. And I've never understood why. But hearing all this, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not absorbing the magnesium the right way. And before we chatted, I knew that magnesium was important just because I think the internet has always been like, we're all magnesium deficient because there's not enough in our food and we're not processing it correctly. So when we talked offline the first time, you shared a lot about like why magnesium is so important and how it actually functions in the body. And it all started to really click for me. So I would love for you to share that knowledge as well, because you're just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, so that's my drive. I always want to know why. And as soon as you learn something, there's another question. So you have to keep opening doors to understand the why of the next bit.
Yes.
It doesn't stop, let me tell you. But it's fun. It's like solving puzzles. When you join the dots and you have a eureka moment, the light bulb goes on. It's just a dopamine hit for me. I love it.
Yeah.
So magnesium is the master mineral electrolyte. It's the top of the tree. It has more jobs to do than any other mineral in the body. And it's a very important co-partner for many other nutrients, for those nutrients to work better. So it gives energy to enzymes. You have to have magnesium to make proteins, any protein, including enzymes, proteins like hormones, proteins like collagen and elastin. All of them require enough magnesium for proteins, and DNA is a protein. All of those proteins that make up the body have to have enough magnesium for those little cellular factories to be able to make the proteins we need to hold us together. So when you have a magnesium deficiency, you can get shortage in the protein production, which makes the skin thinner and less resilient, or you have problems with the bones. All those collagen structures can be weaker. You can have issues with the electrical system, and that's because magnesium is central to metabolism. So energy metabolism, the making of electrical energy, and the electrical energy fuels everything in the body. It's like your PowerPoint. So, you might have the best hard drive on your computer and computer screen, high res, and, everything's working as far as your computer goes, as far as the hardware components, even the software.
Yeah.
But if you don't plug it into the power source, you got nothing. It's the same with the body. Without the energy, nothing works. So a lot of us are walking around with magnesium deficiency, and it's like computer safe mode. It's sort of working, but not optimally. Until you put up with sort of for a long, long time, and then finally you get past the tipping point where diseases start to manifest. And you can get a whole range of metabolic diseases. Everything's to do with metabolism and energy can manifest in disease, and depends on your genetic predisposition, because these are all extra stresses that keep pushing on you and scraping all the resources off the bottom of the barrel. So you keep, it's like a bank account. You keep pulling too much out and not putting enough back. And so you end up with deficit and then problems. Now, getting back to restless legs and the electrical system. So mitochondria, so they produce our electrical energy units called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. And these are little storage batteries that are stored in the cells, mostly in the membrane of the cell. And they always have to be combined with magnesium. It doesn't work. I mean, the mitochondria can produce ATPs, but if magnesium is in short supply, they slow down the production of energy because you have to have magnesium present.
Interesting.
And And what happens is if you have a shortage in energy and electrical energy, you have this intermittent thing that happens. You don't have a direct flow of electrical energy to where you need it most, which is your muscles. Your brain uses a lot of electricity. So as you have a lowering of electrical output, you can get brain fog, not think clearly, lose concentration easily, and sleeping problems. Because what happens is the hormone system is affected, the whole endocrine system. Then the body is in a state of panic, in a sense. It's always driving you with adrenaline, the stress hormones, fight or flight. You're ready for action, and you can't switch from that sympathetic mode to the parasympathetic mode, which is rest and digest, where everything's relaxed, where you can get to sleep nicely. So what happens with the restless legs is that you may be able to get to sleep, but you wake up frequently because your legs are kicking out. Can be associated also with cramps. It's a very similar thing. So these are electrical system glitches where you're not getting a smooth flow because the electrolytes are low. Magnesium is the most important mineral electrolyte. And also during the night, because we're not drinking enough water, especially during the early hours of the morning, the body gets a bit drier.
Yeah.
So what happens with magnesium? It has a very high affinity with water. It attracts water to itself, and that's how it brings water inside the cell. So as you lose magnesium through stress causes the kidney to pee out more magnesium. The cell wall, the membrane becomes a bit more leaky. The channels get looser. And so you can lose potassium, which is not good. And you can lose too much magnesium, but what goes with them is more water and hydration. So the cells start, the muscle cells in particular start to squeeze together. There's your cramp. Because the electrical flow and the water is not. So you need water and electrolytes coming together to make electricity. So cramps and restless legs can also be a product of dehydration. But just drinking more water without the minerals makes you pee it out faster. It's not really getting access to the tissue cells like it should unless magnesium is present. So when you put magnesium in your water, or if you drink spring water with the magnesium in it, you've got the electrolytes you need with the water together to feed the muscle cells so they reinflate and expand and relax again. So we're always contracting and expanding, so that's what muscles do, and the heart pumps every day. It's contracting and releasing, contracting, releasing. So we need, for the relaxation, magnesium and water to come in the cells, and then to squeeze, we need the magnesium to temporarily come out a bit and calcium to go in, because calcium has an attractive force and a dehydrating part of it. So it pulls the muscle fibers together. It pushes out the water to the extracellular spaces, and when it pulls together, you get the muscle contraction to do work. But you don't want to get stuck there. So that's what happens over time. This expansion and contraction that should be happening quite quickly and easily with lots of flexibility and ease starts to get stuck. As magnesium gets lower, calcium doesn't really follow magnesium loss under stress. So we can get a lot of calcium in food. So calcium starts to become more dominant as magnesium drops, and they have an antagonistic relationship. So they kind of balance each other out. In fact, a lot of scientists now are thinking we need a lot more magnesium than calcium rather than a 1-to-1. So in the old days, they used to think you need 2 calcium to 1 magnesium, and that's totally wrong because then you'd just be like rock hard. So we do a lot of shows and expos, and I give people little demonstrations on the shoulder muscles because you don't realize how much tension you hold in the shoulders even without thinking. Like, I don't have any problems. I've got no pain. It was when I just use a little bit of magnesium oil spritz or a lotion or cream, whatever. Just massage it in. Depends on the skin type and how dry the skin is. We can choose different products. But we get the magnesium in, and literally within a couple of minutes, they're like going, you feel the difference between that side and that side. That means I have to talk less and convince them less because they can actually experience it and feel the difference. So that's what it's all about, experiencing and feeling the difference, and what works. And then, of course, make sure to drink enough water. A lot of people walking around today very dehydrated. They're relying on juices and other kind of beverages. They're just liquid foods. Nothing does what water does. Water with electrolytes in it is what you need for the body to clean itself and for its electrical nervous system. If you can't detox and clean and get rid of the rubbish, then you start to get blockages of waste products. The waste products become acidic. They ferment, kind of like your compost bit outside, and the microbes, the bugs get in there, and their job is to recycle that into the planet again and turn it into soil. But you don't want that happening while you're still alive. You want to kick those kind of bugs out. You see, the acids attract them. So all disease can be associated with the presence of, these pathogenic bacteria, fungi, all sorts of microorganisms that are there to chew things up and convert it back into reusable soils to grow more stuff. But in an alive, vibrant, healthy system with good electrical output and hydration and minerals, you keep a charge at the cellular level of a little bit alkaline. So 7, like the blood, 7.3, 7.4 is a nice alkaline charge where the blood vessels with that negative charge on the surface bounce off one another, and it's a beautiful fluidity. It gives the blood cell a good surface area so that it can absorb and deliver lots of nutrients and oxygen, because what you don't want is a positive charge. So that moves into the acidic range where they start to attract and clump together, and eventually they can form a thrombus, so clot, like lumps, and that then obstructs the blood flow. So you can get strokes. Or if you haven't addressed the blood pH enough, calcium can be attracted to the walls of the arteries. And over time, the arterial fine muscles inside the lining of the vessels can get stiffer, just like you've got stiff muscles in your legs. You get stiff muscles in the vessels, in the arteries and the veins. And that means that they can't expand and contract like they should. And blood pressure builds up because it's like a dry hose and you're trying to force water through it and it's not moving.
Okay.
That pushes the pressure up. So, and what causes the calcium to be attracted to sites of injury, so exposure to too much acid causes injury to cells. What attracts the calcium is that pH, that lower pH, because calcium is used in the body as an alkalizing mineral when other kind of alkalizers are not available. Maybe you're not producing enough bicarb soda, that might be an issue with pancreas, in which case you can take extra bicarb soda as a supplement. And more antioxidants, lemon juice and apple cider vinegar in your salads, and things that help the cells clean and detox and move back into that alkaline pH, then means the body doesn't need to pull calcium out of the bones, because it can get stuck in those soft tissue. It's stuck in the muscle cells, in the vessels. So, cramps and restless legs are just the surface of it all. But the longer you put up with that stuff, the worse the condition of magnesium deficiency can get, and the closer you get to diseases. And they include diseases like diabetes.
Yeah.
Because there's a direct relationship between diabetes and magnesium deficiency. Direct. And the reason is the metabolism. So the less magnesium the body has and the less oxygen, because, the less magnesium means it tends to become more acidic. That means that the cells can't make electricity using oxygen because you can't dissolve oxygen in an acidic environment. So you can't get oxygen into the cells to burn fat. But you can burn sugars anaerobically without oxygen. So then you switch from fat burning to sugar burning. And then you become reliant on sugar burning. It's the only way to get your energy. But that produces a lot more acid, so it's a downward spiral.
Right.
So the lower the magnesium, the higher the sugar sensitivity, the less we can deal with carbs, especially processed carbs and sugars.
Yeah.
And the higher the magnesium to optimal levels, the less risk of diabetes, because we become more capable of handling the carbohydrates and the sugars, because we're mostly burning fats. That's why keto diets work so well with people who have sugar sensitivity, because they're like forcing the body to move back to fat burning, but they also need a lot of magnesium, drink a lot of water. You need water, magnesium, oxygen, or you get oxygen from exercise, so you need to move that body. Don't sit in front of the TV, in a sedentary lifestyle. You're in the office all day, you come home and you sit down and you sit down and you sit down everywhere. And, without pushing the body and exercising the muscles and getting that squeezing and contraction and breathing, getting oxygen into the lungs, you're not pushing oxygen into the body to get that really beautiful fat-burning metabolism. And that helps the body a lot, because we're not then producing as much. We're still producing waste byproducts, but the body is much more able to deal with it and detox. Rather than saving it up inside fat cells, because that then is related to insulin resistance. And this is interesting, because if the body can't detox and it builds up too many free radicals inside the cells, those free radicals can kill mitochondria. So what the cell does is it stops absorbing or letting in through the channels the insulin, the glucose, the magnesium, because it's trying to inhibit metabolism. It's trying to cut down metabolism, because more metabolism is going to cause more waste products to be produced, and there's no way to get rid of it. The stuff you had before, the garbage is building up, right?
Yeah.
So until you reverse that and start to help the body, support the body to clean itself better, drink more water, have the electrolytes, avoid the processed foods, the chemicals. There are many chemicals that block magnesium. Fluoride, for instance, is a halogen that has a chemical affinity with magnesium. So most of the fluoride toxicity side effects are the same as magnesium deficiency. The same, because it locks up your magnesium. It robs it from your body.
Yeah.
So, your magnesium, if you have a lot of it, can counterbalance that and protect you in a sense from fluoride exposures, because we don't always know where we're getting it. You might be having a nice cappuccino in a cafe and they've used fluoridated tap water to make that coffee.
Right.
It's endemic in the food supply now, in any food that's made using tap water with fluoride in it.
Mm-hmm.
It can make its way. They call this the halo effect. It's amplified then in the food supply, in juices, in reconstituted juices, like a number of ways. And if children, for instance, I've noted, they drink a lot of juice with the fluoride in it, they get the fluorosis, the white flecks in the teeth, because children are very sensitive. They're much more sensitive to fluoride, because everything is finer and more tuned and more vulnerable.
Sure.
And it affects how the brain works. Like, it dumbs everything down, because your whole endocrine system, the metabolism drops. Metabolism for the brain. The brain needs a lot of electrolytes and water, and it can't afford to have those resources stolen. because then you start to rob everything. So, it's never just one thing that causes a health problem. But I can honestly tell you I found magnesium to be one of the most, if not the most important factor contributing to most diseases out there, because it comes right down to metabolism in the mitochondria, inside cells. Our whole power supply is affected. So you can pick anything in the body that's not working like it should, and you can trace it back to, it also is magnesium deficiency. And then, you get side effects and you get a domino effect. It's like the trunk of the tree. Magnesium is the trunk of the tree, and then it affects all the branches. So if you're only looking at the branches, you won't see where the branches are coming from, which is the trunk. So if you go to the source as much as possible, to the core of the issue, and you address that, then suddenly the branches fix themselves. Beautiful things happen. The body is mysteriously miraculous, and it has all the right knowledge and wisdom embedded in the DNA. It wants to live. It wants to keep you alive. It's got all the mechanisms. It just needs us to feed it with the right resources and to exercises. And I liken it to be a farmer. And you want to grow beautiful vegetables, you have to make sure that the soil has the right minerals, the right pH balance, not too alkaline, not too acid. It's got water and sunshine, and all the elements are there for those plants to thrive. And you fertilize it, you look after it. It's a bit like us with our cells in our body. It's our garden. And we have to look after what we're growing and make sure they have everything that they need, and then they do their own thing. You don't tell the plants how to grow. You just give the plants what they need, right?
Yeah. And this actually brings me to one other question that I want to ask you is, where do you think we've gone wrong, or why do you think now we're starting to notice that there's such almost like an epidemic of magnesium deficiency? Is it just because we're more scientifically advanced and we can tell that our food is not giving us what we need? Or do you think it's because we've gone towards this ultra processed lifestyle that is robbing us of our magnesium?
Yeah, all of the above. So it's mainly two main things. It's the industrial farming that have depleted the soils of magnesium. They don't necessarily put the magnesium back, because they can make plants grow with NPK fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And they still look nice on the outside, but they're devoid of many trace minerals, and especially magnesium. You can taste the difference as well with something that's organically grown compared to the same vegetable that's industrially farmed. It's empty. It has an empty taste. It looks great on the outside. So you don't judge it by its appearance. Sometimes your organic fruit or vegetable can be a little bit gnarled or misshapen, but it tastes great.
Who cares if my potato looks weird? Not me.
Got all the minerals in it. That's all that counts. Yeah. So, and the other thing is the stress levels. As I mentioned before, we pee out excessive magnesium under stress. We lose it from our magnesium bank account, and we can't often put it back with food alone.
Yeah.
And so it's being robbed twice.
Right.
Unless you find a way to put a lot of magnesium back. And traditionally, even before modern lifestyles and food processing, people have gone to mineral-rich hot springs to alleviate their arthritis and aches and pains by sitting in salt baths, from volcanic vents, or, the different places around the planet that specialize, they have deep springs coming up with lots of minerals in it. And so they sit in these, because bathing, you getting the mineral uptake through bathing in these springs has been practiced for thousands of years. There's nothing new under the sun. And people they do this regularly. It's like a pilgrimage to keep their youth, to stay younger longer, to prevent premature aging. Because as we get older, the digestive system doesn't work very well. Things start to not work optimally. And so, but if you can absorb it through the skin, you've got a head start. You can delay that aging process.
Totally. I did a Japanese onsen the last time I traveled to Kyoto, and I had never done one before, but I was just so exhausted from the trip and my feet hurt so bad from walking all over the city that I was like, I just need to soak in a hot bath and revive myself. And I wasn't expecting anything crazy. I just thought it was going to be another bath, but I felt amazing after doing one of those natural hot springs. And so I'm such a firm believer that those are truly magical.
The beauty of soaking is not only that you're getting the magnesium mineral uptake, but your skin is opening up and also releases wastes from the skin, from the lymph system. So the lymphatic system is a protein waste disposal system. So it's got the white fluid if you injure yourself, the lymph fluid. Under your armpits, you have big lymph nodes. So when you perspire, out comes waste products, which then the bacteria feed off, and the bacteria produce smells that are not pleasant.
Yeah.
That's body odor. It's coming out from the lymph, and it's a way the body has to detox itself through the skin. It's a major, major detox organ. So you can use it. You can use it if you're starting to store up wastes and get clogged pipes. Use more soaking to help your body detox. That lifts the load off the kidney and the liver to do that job. Then they've got less work to do. Then they may not be overloaded because you're compensating with soaking. Perspiring, and when you exercise and you perspire, you're also getting rid of waste, but you're using the minerals as well. So you make sure you're drinking enough mineral water to put back the minerals in the water that's lost. But that's good also to expel the wastes through the perspiration. That's why infrared saunas work so well, and all sorts of saunas. Anything that makes you perspire is very healthy for the blood circulation, as long as you replace the water and the minerals, because if you don't, you can people who are prone to hypertension with a high level of heat and the perspiration may be too stressful for them. And if they don't drink enough to replace the water and the minerals, it can leave them dehydrated, which can be dangerous because if the blood's dehydrated, it gets thicker. So if you already have a hypertension problem or a clotting disease and you introduce an extra level of dehydration, that may be not very good for you. That may exacerbate the problem. So with those people, I recommend to do a little bit more slowly and not so, much at one time. You could do a foot soak, which is very gentle. A tablespoon of magnesium chloride salt flakes in a bucket of hot water and just soak for 20 or 30 minutes. Soak your feet. Because if you've been in Japan, they have those little foot pads that can also draw toxins out overnight while you're sleeping. And the reason is a Japanese therapist explained it to me one day. The gravity pulls a lot of those toxins down into the feet over a day. So your feet tend to have a higher concentration of those waste products.
Interesting.
And when you're soaking, or you have a medium that can extract and pull that out, using the skin, it just lifts the load off the other system to help you detox. Detox is everything. As we get older, we just have more waste piling up, and so we need to do more work to help the body clean itself better. And that helps the life force, the electrical delivery of energy to work better. And so if everything has the fuel and the electrical energy, it's working better, right?
Totally. That makes so much sense. Sandy, this has been a truly fascinating conversation. I have learned so much, and I sincerely appreciate your time and your expertise on this. And I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of the listeners too.
I do too. I hope so. I felt it was my mission, seeing that I was able to fix my own health issues. I felt really appreciative to God, the universe, to actually give me a problem that I had to solve that turned out to be the best thing I've ever done in my life. I feel like I'm on my mission now.
Yeah.
So I turned lemons into lemonade, although I don't drink lemonade. It's got sugar in it. But you know what I mean.
Totally.
And so I feel like I'm doing my thing that I'm meant to do, and it's very rewarding. It gives me huge buzz to share this with as many people as possible. And thank you very much for making it possible to talk to a lot more people.
Absolutely.